Tēnā koutou katoa, and welcome everyone to Rosterfy's second webinar of our Aotearoa New Zealand Lunch and Learn series in partnership with Volunteering New Zealand. Co-hosting with me today is Rosterfy's co-founder Shannan Gove, and my name is Kelsey. And with this series, we intend to support you with all the amazing mahi that you do by inviting along thought leaders in the volunteering space to have insightful kōrero over your lunch break. And I am super excited today to be joined by David Kirk. I do feel like David doesn't really need much introduction, but he is a celebrated leader both in the rugby world and the business community. He serves as chair of NZ Rugby and non-for-profit Kiwi Harvest, and is the former chair of the New Zealand Food Network, and he is also the chairperson of Rosterfy. A former captain of the All Blacks, David led the team to victory in the inaugural 1987 Rugby World Cup, and today he continues to shape the future of leadership, not only in sport, but also in the impact space, sharing his valuable insights and experiences. An investor and co-founder at the Ballador Technology Investments, David applies his strategic vision to the tech sector, guiding the next generation of innovative companies, and his unique blend of leadership, vision, and commitment to excellence has made him a highly, highly respected figure in both sports and business. So welcome, David. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Kelsey. Great to be here.
Amazing. Just quickly before we kick things off, I'm just going to throw to Shannan just to give a little introduction on Rosterfy.
Thank you, Kelsey, and David, thanks for your time, and thanks to the team at Volunteering New Zealand for their support here as well. So for those that we haven't met yet, it is really nice to meet you all, and thank you for taking the time out of your day to join us. So a very quick intro to who we are and what do we care about. So as a business, Rosterfy, we aim to exist, and we exist to connect communities to events and causes they're passionate about. So it should be easy to help your community as a volunteer. And from an administrative perspective, we aim to be the very best in the world at managing mass-scale volunteer programs in an end-to-end software platform. Okay, so we work with some of the largest names in the world. And Kelsey, maybe if you just flick across to the next slide. We've powered over 100 million hours of volunteering around the world across 35 countries, but proudly born and bred down in this part of the world. So here's just a quick sample of some of the large non-profits that we work with, from the Salvation Army, Scouts, British Heart Foundation, St. Vinny's. Work with a lot of the different chains like Ronald McDonald House that have lots of different business units. So that's just a sample of non-profits. And then Kelsey, the next one, highlights some of the major events and sports that we work with around the world as well, which when you think of some of the largest volunteering programs and the size that they have, and New Zealand's had some fantastic large-scale events. The FIFA Women's was there a few years ago. We've worked with the rugby over there in the past. Here's some of the more international major events that we look after, with including the last 9 Super Bowls in America. We're the global platform for FIFA for over 1 million volunteers. So for us, when you think about large-scale programs that want to really future-proof the way they manage their volunteers through software, that's where we exist to operate at Rosterfy, and we'd love to meet you all and understand more about your program and challenges you might be facing. But we'll hand it over to Kelsey and David, as I'm really keen to listen in and pick up a few learnings today. So Kelsey, back to you.
Amazing. Thanks so much. We do only have around about 30 minutes for the session, so we're going to kick things off now, but just a little bit of housekeeping. Hopefully you can all see at the top right bar, we do have a Q&A function in there. So as David and I are chatting, please feel free to drop questions in there, and if they're relevant for that moment, we'll bring them in to the conversation. Otherwise, we'll do a Q&A session at the end as well. Amazing. So David, you've been in the non-for-profit sector for well over a decade now. Why are you so invested in NFPs?
Well, great question. Thank you everyone for coming on. But more importantly, thank you for all the work you do for people all around New Zealand and some of you overseas as well. It's often unrecognised, but it's fantastic and important. You do important work, and thank you for that. Look, just to answer the question, Kelsey, sort of some involvement with some form of not-for-profit has really been just part of my life for a long period of time. I think maybe I grew up in Palmerston North in New Zealand, and my mum was always she was stay-at-home mum, but she was always doing lots of stuff in the community. It was just part of maybe it's that generation as well, going back
Yeah.
maybe too many years for some of the young people here. But people always did things in the community. They helped out other people, and that's really just been part of what I do. So being on school boards, being on local authority boards, working with food rescue, not-for-profits, working with arts organisations has always been part of what I've done, and I've got a huge amount of satisfaction out of it. You get a lot back working in the not-for-profit space. A lot of it can be hard work and challenging, but you feel a lot of satisfaction. You remember the things that you do well for other people.
Yeah, absolutely. I've also volunteered for Life Fund in New Zealand for a number of years, and I always say that I've got some of the greatest learnings in my life just from volunteering. So absolutely. Moving around to leadership, obviously with all your experience, you have some really key learnings around there. So what would you recommend to volunteer organisations around leadership? What are some of your key points looking back?
Well, I think it's pretty clear from sport. Obviously, I had a lot of sport experience working my way up through the ranks in New Zealand and getting to be captain of the All Blacks and being in the right place at the right time in 1987 to captain the team to win the World Cup. So I've had a lot of experience there. But then I went into business as well, and it's funny how there's a lot of overlap, and then not-for-profits it's also quite similar. So I'll just run through a few things and wherever you apply them, sport, business, not-for-profit, they're the same standard things that just you have to understand and have to be good at if you're going to have lead your organisation well. I guess firstly, everyone needs to know why we're here. What's the point? What are we trying to achieve? And you can call out a vision or a mission or a purpose, and they all mean the same things. So people in the organisation need to know that there's something we're here to achieve together, something that makes a difference. And ideally that purpose or excuse me, or vision will have both a quite practical component. We can tell when we're successful because we'll have done a certain number of measurable things, but it'll also have an emotional component, a component where you feel like you have made a contribution or you have won or you have been the best you could be. I mean, that was really what it was like in the All Blacks. I mean, of course, winning World Cups and winning Bledisloe Cups and winning every match really is what we try to do. But we tried also to transcend that one match to another mentality and really talk about and think about how could we be the best rugby team that had ever played the game? How could we push back the boundaries of the way the game was played? And so that gave us that sort of real emotional charge to try and just be the best that there's ever been. And I think it's actually easier in not-for-profits in a way because you're dealing with people and you are genuinely helping people in more difficult circumstances than you are. And so you feel you can really get an emotional connection from that. So having a vision, having a purpose is absolutely fundamental, and clearly lots of not-for-profits have that, but being able to articulate that clearly so people understand it, and particularly when new people come into the organisation and you want them to understand what motivates the organisation and drives it, you need to be clear on that. And then, a lot of what gets done is people understanding their role in the organisation or their role in the team and having a manager or someone communicate clearly to them what success looks like. In sport, in the All Blacks, it's pretty obvious what success looks like. I was a halfback. I had to put the ball in straight at scrums and not get penalised. I had to make the calls at lineouts. I had to pass. I had to kick. I had to run. I had to tackle. It's very obvious in sport what success looks like. But people need to know in the workplace, in a not-for-profit or a business, they need to know exactly what is expected of them, and they need to know what success looks like. And when they do succeed, they need good, positive feedback. And if they are off track, they are, trying but wandering a bit and not doing the right things. Sitting down with them and talking to them about here's what success looks like. Here's what we're asking you to do. Here's what the things are that will help you be successful. And if you're successful in your job, then we can be successful as an organisation. So that clarity of communication, it's kind of in one way you calling it performance management, but it's really just a conversation about what's expected and what you're doing. That happens a lot in rugby, in sport. I mean, during a game, 80-minute game, I was playing with Grant Fox outside me and Wayne Shelford, Buck Shelford at number 8. So they're two iconic names in New Zealand rugby, two very powerful personalities. So people are talking all the time. People saying, "Do this, do that. I'll do this, you do that." There's real rapid feedback in the sports environment on what goes well and what doesn't go well and what's planned next. You don't need that in a business. You have longer term plans and people have clear understandings of what they're there to achieve. But checking in with people and helping them understand that this is a high performance environment. We're doing great work for people, but we are going to perform really well as an organisation. I think that's really crucial. Having the plan's important too, and particularly in not-for-profits, having the plan, which starts as a strategic plan, which is more of a big picture about what we want to achieve over a number of years, but then a more specific operational plan. Here's what we're going to do in day to day and month to month and over the period of a year. That's important, particularly in not-for-profits, because it connects to the budget and the fundraising and the need for money. And I know, as well as many people on this call, that finding money and being able to fund what you need to do and managing that money and not being and dealing with the ups and the downs of losing a sponsor or losing someone is one of the most demanding and challenging things for anyone in the space. So having a good plan and having a budget that goes with it, which gives you a bit of room on the downside, meaning like if you don't quite hit all your targets for fundraising, you can still operate the organisation, is really crucial as well. And it's a real learning from business.
Yeah.
Shannan,
David, quick question from my side. What we're seeing out there, especially for a lot of the nonprofits that we work with, and especially in this part of the world as well, people are doing it really tough out there. Cost of living's going up. The need for a lot of these nonprofit services is going through the roof. But at the same time, the funding and the budgets aren't matching that demand. And so, David, what are some lessons you've learned about sort of leading through tough times when perhaps you haven't had the resource to deliver what you want? You might have your colleagues internally saying, "Hey, David, like, why aren't we getting the love we need? Like, I'm working too hard, and why haven't we got the funding?" This sort of thing. How have you sort of gone through those waters in the past, David?
Yeah, good question. It breaks up into a few pieces. The first bit is managing through challenging times with regard to funding. And the best advice I can give is in two parts. One is double down on the return you are giving and being able to communicate the social return and even in some cases the financial return that you are delivering. Firstly, or the social return for your clients, if you like, or customers, or the people that you are working and doing the delivering the benefits for. Really be clear about what that is, and try to get the most out of that. But then think really carefully about who is a match for this type of funding, for this type of support. Because corporate, if you're thinking about sponsorship in particular, corporates they really want to get a return on their investment in funding social good, which means that can come in a number of ways. It can come in engagement from volunteers, and that's an important one for most larger corporates. They give opportunity for their staff to volunteer. So it can come in that sense, or it can come from brand benefits for the corporate because the not-for-profit's working in an area where their brand is relevant. It might be things countryside, or it might be things to do with Māori or Pacifica, or it might be particular parts of large cities. But if you can find a way to connect to sponsors, then that get some real benefit for their business out of doing good in communities that are important to them and which you serve as a not-for-profit, then I think that's really important. And I would say thirdly, double down on grants. Getting a grant writer as someone to help you fill in grants is really tough. A lot of not-for-profits sit right at that border of we can't really afford to get a grant person. If we could get the money in from the grants to pay for the person to write the grants, then we'd be okay and we could get more grants. But somehow you need to jump that chasm because there is grant money out there, but you do need to go through a few hoops, and you need to fill in the forms, and you need to follow up and answer questions and so on. So I think those are just three ways in which managing through tough times you can find your focus.
Yeah. My last question here. I've seen both sides of when it gets tough, organizations sometimes just focus on the short term because it's somewhat unavoidable, right? But then there's the downside of that decision down the line that they weren't factoring the long term, and often investing in sort of strategy and systems and things like that can fall away. I've seen, and I've seen good and bad. What's your thoughts on that? Keeping sort of a long-term vision at the top of mind when times are tough, David?
I think it's really important to do that, and the long-term vision in the first place is about the good you deliver and the benefit you have. So never lose sight of that, and keep the North Star, clear for the organisation, and keep clear about what you're trying to achieve. But you can't just be a hamster in a hamster wheel, running around, going around, being in the same pace with the same slightly shrinking funding, trying to do more with less all the time. You have to break out of that. And so the longer term means investing in building up the capability of the organization, certainly to deliver more to to the people you're working with, the people that need your help, but also to make the organization more capable of being a bigger organization. And that might be in the form of fundraising, it might be in the form of investment in software, it might be for volunteer management, it might be something different. But continuing to think about how do we future-proof the organisation, how do we make the organisation able to operate at a higher level, and you should find that they become self-reinforcing. Having a longer-term plan, sticking to that plan, raising money to do things that are important to deliver on your longer-term plan will make the next step easier. Because and many people on this call will know this, there's a certain scale where you kind of get stuck in it. You can't quite grow any bigger because you can't afford to hire more people, and those people would otherwise be writing grants or getting sponsors. So you find it difficult. You have to try and find a way to break out of that rut.
And your volunteers can be such a powerful workforce if they're really engaged and they're sort of having that great volunteer experience during those tough times, right? Because they can power you so much more without the need for hiring more people in a lot of cases. So that's a really strong argument for, implementing good systems and making sure your volunteers have fantastic experiences just to carry you through.
Yeah,
We've got
sorry, I was just say something that volunteers are absolutely fundamental. Certainly in all the businesses that I've worked with, volunteers have been fundamental for a whole lot of reasons. One is they connect to sponsors, and sponsors, love to see their staff go out and volunteer. But two, they don't charge you anything. And just bottom line, we need in the not-for-profit sector, all of us need inexpensive or cheap labour. And it's not like we're taking advantage of them. They're doing it because they love it, because they want to do it, because it's something that's important to them, and they feel better in their own lives for doing it. So, we're providing a real service and opportunity. So it is really important to think about your volunteer program, regardless of whether you have software to manage them or not. Ideally, you would, definitely. But because the software helps you reporting back to sponsors about how many volunteers you've used and what they've done, and how long they were with you, and who the repeat ones are. And so there's lots of things that corporates are looking for from their not-for-profits when it comes to managing and reporting on volunteers. But the key thing is really to give them a good experience, and to get the mutual benefits of people who work for nothing.
Absolutely, and they're there because they're passionate about the cause, right? Otherwise, they wouldn't be there. So you've already got the passion, which is sometimes the hardest thing to get. So it's just about giving them that fantastic experience, so they stick around and they want to keep supporting you. We've had a question come through from Roger. Thanks, Roger. How do you explain the difference between leadership and management as it applies to non-for-profits?
Great question, and I think it's the same wherever you apply it, but you see it more vividly in not-for-profits. Leadership is interactions with people and engagement with people that inspires them and clarifies their path and encourages them and supports them and holds them accountable, and generally makes them feel good about themselves and about what they're doing, and generally almost invariably, is part of their success. Your success as a leader is part of their success. You help other people succeed. That's what leadership is all about, and inspiring people to learn and to grow and to develop as people. Management is an important, I would say, component of leadership in some extents, but slightly separate as well. And management is, formally having business plans, helping people understand exactly what their role is, helping to manage them on a day-to-day basis, solve problems for them in their workplace and environment, hold them accountable for performance, fairly remunerate them, provide them with other benefits. So it's all of that more formal, disciplined, organizational, administrative work that's necessary to run a good business, a good not-for-profit, a good team. So, but and leaders have to have that. Good leaders are very good on administration, but they don't become great leaders until they add that ability to inspire and engage and really have people want to work with them.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Roger, for your question. Just a reminder, anyone else who wants to pop them in there, the question box is up in the top right-hand corner. Huge question for you, David. What would you do differently if you had to do it all over again?
That's a good one. I wouldn't do too much differently, and the reason I say that is I feel satisfied and even in the mistakes you make, and you do make mistakes. Sometimes you hire the wrong people. It's not the right fit. Sometimes you go too fast and you find you've got to wind back because you're running out of money. And sometimes you miss an opportunity that you should have taken, and you don't feel as if you've delivered on your mission as well as you could otherwise have done. So there are a lot of mistakes, but I've always, in all of my walks of life, owned my mistakes. And I think, when you're the leader, you have to own the mistakes. Yep, my fault. I should have done better on that. But because that's the first step in learning from mistakes. And you say, okay, should have done better. I'm not going to beat myself up forever. I'm going to figure out what I did, and I'm going to make sure I don't do it again. That's going to be sitting there in my mind thinking, next time I see a circumstance like this, I'm going to say, well, maybe I should go the extra lap to figure out whether this actually is the right person for the right role. So there's all of that learning. So I wouldn't do too much differently. I think I would have, like you always think, I wish I knew that then. There's quite a lot of things I would have liked to have accelerated my learning, so I didn't have to make mistakes, and the organisations could have moved quicker if I had known more. But it's always easier after the fact. One thing I will say is, and I've probably been guilty of this, trusting you have to trust people until you definitively can't. And I think I've been pretty good at this, but there've been definitely times when I probably haven't. You have to give people the opportunity, you have to trust them, you have to hold them accountable, you have to be close to them. But when you really feel like, no, this is not the right person for this role, you do have to act as quickly as you can. Don't let it drift on. It's really hard. That's a hard thing to execute on, to do, but so often we all get to the stage where we get to a situation where we finally dealt with a person who wasn't the right fit for the right role, and we think, God, if only I'd done that 6 months ago. So that's certainly an ongoing learning I would definitely encourage people to try and work on.
Awesome. We've had a couple of questions come through I'll jump to. Ingrid, thanks Ingrid. To what extent can you truly scale up as a charity if you largely rely on volunteers? People have less time to volunteer and many want short-term opportunities rather than long-term commitment.
Yeah, Ingrid, I think it is very hard. You hit upon a big problem. You do need a core of people who are full-time working in the business. And I don't know what that is. It depends on the scale of the business, but someone needs to be making sure that, managing the organisation on a day-to-day basis. Someone needs to be going out to, or someone needs to be responsible. It's probably a bit of a shared responsibility, particularly with the founder. But someone needs to be responsible for raising money and for thinking about the future and what money are we going to need when, and planning that and working on sponsors and grants and whatever else other way there are to donations, ways to raise money, because you do get stuck at a small scale until you can break out of that ability to raise money to do good. There might be other things constraining the growth, like we can't find enough people to do good for. We need to expand our geographic area in order to be able to deliver. So, but that again will need to come with funding and other sources. So I think, and a lot of people on the call probably will have felt this, a lot of it does circle back to the resources required to grow. And you have to think about that, and those two resources are almost invariably people and money. And those people need to be working in the business, and they need to be paid for that. So that goes together.
Another question here from Toby. Thanks, Toby. David, what is the one thing you'd suggest volunteer managers or leaders focus on in relation to their own ongoing development?
I think, firstly, I mean, like in everything, like playing halfback for the All Blacks, and I was the captain. But my most important job was to be the best halfback I could be, to be the best halfback in the world, if I could be. So that meant that the team played well, and I played well in my position, and people had a lot of respect for me, and they would say, "Oh, it's great. He should be one of the first ones picked in the team because he's one of the best players." That's really important. So I take that analogy and apply it to all working environments. You need to be really good at what you do as a core in your core role, and there's lots of things that are associated in volunteer management. Clearly liaising with large corporates or whoever else are providing the volunteers, making sure that volunteers are well inducted onto the site, managing, being very clear about how to explain to them what is expected of them and what they should be doing and how to work safely, and then managing them and helping them grow and do interesting things. It might be an opportunity to mostly working in a warehouse or something like we have at Kiwi Harvest and New Zealand Food Network, but also there might be an opportunity for them to go around in the vans and collect food that's available for rescuing. So somehow helping them with development pathways as well that makes them excited and encouraged and want to come back, and then find being able to communicate really clearly with the sponsor or the corporate about the value to them of the value of having a volunteer team at your organisation. So that really is, I've gone through in a bit of detail, but it's really about being really understanding what moves the dial for your organisation in your role and being able to do that. And I think also, and we find a lot of not-for-profits, you'll find people need to be a little bit the jack of all trades, be really good at what you do, but sometimes you've got to fill in for someone else. So look for opportunities to do that, because that people like variety. It'll help you to grow and develop and have a more wider range of skills if you're working in other parts of the business as well.
Yeah, absolutely. A question here from Marion. With the cost of living crisis and retention issues with volunteering, how do you inspire people or volunteers to get through the hard times?
Really good question, and I think you've got to inspire them with your purpose. This is what we're here for. This is what we're doing. We're doing really important work for other people. Now, that's number one. I don't think they'll get you all the way in the end, because if it's a bad working environment, they turn up and no one else is there and no one's there to work with them, then they probably will drift off as well. So you want them to have a good working environment. And that good working environment has got to be, disciplined and focused. You don't want people getting hurt or doing the wrong things, but also it's got to be a bit of fun. People, there's got to be an environment where people feel, oh, it's cool. I go along there, I see people I like. It's good fun. They might be listening to radio. They might be doing this. Whatever it is. There's a sense that you're with other like-minded people who are good people. And if you have sort of like problems where people are a bit narky or people not getting on or something, you have to jump on and address those problems. There's a simile in sports teams, and if you've got players that have got different personalities and they just don't get on, you've got to just address it. And addressing it is just talking about it. That's all it is. It's just surfacing it and saying, look, you guys don't seem to be getting on, not really enjoying working together. What's up? What can we do to help you feel better? And then they'll both each have a bit of a complaint about the other one. And then you can find out Okay, well, we've all got to work together here and find a way to actually, help people to get to grips with the fact that people are different.
Yeah, absolutely. We need to wrap up in just a moment, unless anyone has any sort of last minute questions coming through. But I know you briefly touched on sort of volunteer experience and keeping the passion within your volunteers as well. Like, do you have one sort of last sort of takeaway you'd like to share regarding how you can really make sure your volunteers have just like a fantastic experience, or maybe when you've been a volunteer yourself, what's really changed the game for you in that experience? So I know we have a lot of volunteers on the call
Yeah.
today, so
Yeah, I think it's a combination of. I mean, the purpose is important. You really you're there for a purpose, but no one wants to be in a boring environment or an unfun environment or a sort of a really serious environment, particularly younger people. It
yeah,
does have to be an engaging and interesting environment. So that
yeah,
means if people can develop friendships and relationships, and just enjoy working with each other, and then
mm-hmm.
do something beyond that workplace together. Maybe have it not on the site usually, but go somewhere to have a Friday night drink maybe, or just a Friday night
Mm-hmm.
catch up, or maybe there's some other way in which the organisation can say, okay, we've got 5 people here who like to do triathlons or something. We're going to go and have a little team organisation at the triathlon. We'd like any
Mm-hmm.
volunteers that want to come and be part of. We'll have a little tent there or something. Just something where you can make people feel like they're part of a team, part of an
Yeah,
organisation, part of they belong, and they want to
yeah,
sort of keep belonging and keep being engaged with that organisation. I think
yeah.
is a help.
I know when we spoke previously as well, you mentioned just how important it was to really spend time with your volunteers. So get things in place sort of to help you with all the stuff that bogs your time away, and actually really get to know your volunteer community and who
Yeah.
they are, why they're passionate. And I think that was just such a nice takeaway from that as well. Definitely.
Yes.
Okay, I think we're at time here. So, David, thank you so much for your time today. Obviously, I feel like I've learned a lot, and I know everyone else on this call would have as well. So, for anyone interested in hearing a little bit more about Rosterfy, I've got both mine and Shannan's details up on here as well. As mentioned, I will be hosting a Lunch and Learn series with a new guest each week, I think on the first, either Tuesday or Wednesday of the month, hopefully, depending on our guests' availability. So please feel free to share any invites to your wider teams as well for our next one, and also follow Rosterfy and Shannan and myself on LinkedIn just to keep up with the upcoming topics. In the same way, if there's someone you'd like us to get on the webinar, please let us know. This particular webinar will be made available on demand, and we'll share a link with that for you later this week if there's anyone else you want to share it with. Otherwise, mā te wā, everybody. Thank you for sharing your lunch break with us, and we hope to see you again on our next session.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
See you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.